In this episode, you'll learn how AI is reshaping the workforce, not just from a technology angle, but also how we work, learn, and adapt. From automating mundane tasks to reimagining workplace planning, we explore how AI is really impacting the future of work. Let's accelerate your business. Welcome to the AI Accelerator for Business show, where you get the latest strategies, tactics, and information about the business benefits of artificial intelligence. My name is Carl Ye, and I'm always joined by my co-host, Jeff Bradshaw. And we have a special guest today. Her name is Andrea Adams. She owns the HR consultancy called the HR Hub. And because our show today is, we're going to discuss the future of work in the age of AI.
Andrea, thanks for joining us. And this is a very important topic because I think it's a bit of an unknown and it scares some people. Excites some people, but the future of our workplace, I think, is a pretty important topic. So glad to have you here, Andrea.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
I think the first topic that is always on everyone's minds is the impact of AI on jobs, and I guess either eliminating jobs or creating new opportunities. And I actually want to go to one area where we've all talked and seen the impacts before is what happens to the roles of, I guess, those junior employees, the ones who are just freshly graduating or who are about to graduate or thinking of graduating who are still in school now? What happens when, all the AI, a lot of AI tools, and we've talked about this a lot, Jeff and I have, about automation, digital assistants, all the AI is actually doing all the eye roll, the manual, the boring tasks that were once done or currently still being done by the co-op students, the interns, or the junior employees. What do you think, Andrea, is the impact of AI on that level?
I don't have any answers, and I've actually even researched this. So I do think that AI is going to reduce to some extent the number of those positions. However, we are still going to need people. So what it may mean is that, instead of, if I think back to, and HR may be a little bit less impacted because it's such a people-focused role. So maybe my experience isn't the best, but if you were thinking about maybe, a junior finance person who's just, producing spreadsheets and running this and doing, really basic stuff, some of that might be implemented. But for say finance grads, it might actually be exciting because they can get into meaningful work faster. And I'm kind of excited because, I think about if I had HR had AI my entire career, like how much further along in my thinking I would be by this time. So it's also like an exciting opportunity for them. They'll start a little bit higher. They'll have AI as a partner the entire time. And, you can just imagine where that will take them by the end of their career. But for those, like those early jobs, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. What I would be encouraging grads to be doing is, becoming early adopters of AI and learning all they can in conjunction with whatever skill that they're studying. So maybe it's finance, maybe it's HR, but do both of those things in conjunction because you will with that combination add a lot of value to your employer.
I'm curious, and I never want to be the dark cloud, but I think that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. And I think that the reason I say that is that I think that we have to face the facts that is a possibility. That's not our hope, but that is a possibility. When we talk about, Carl just posted a video today about full stack businesses using AI. So, creating, for example, a law firm where all the work is done by AI. So if there's currently, let's say, 100,000 lawyers in Canada, does that mean we only need 10,000 lawyers 10 years from now? So what do those other 90,000 people do? And so how do businesses structure that? And I guess my question to you, Andrea, is that right now HR is human resources, but I'm wondering, will it be the HR department that's also responsible for managing your AI employees in the future?
No, I don't think so. I don't think HR is going to be managing the AI employees because the AI employees, if there are any, don't have feelings. And they don't have feelings, they don't have personality. And so much of what we're doing in HR is creating, a great environment for people to work in, but for people, real people to work in. I think it'll be another department managing AI employees in conjunction with HR, because HR is providing oversight of the work and the big picture, look at the work that needs to get done and the jobs. And so we'll have to be involved in that conversation around if there are, almost AI employees, but I don't think there are going to be AI employees. There's going to be AI doing parts of jobs, but they're not employees. But so how does that integrate? How does that impact jobs? And what does the human part of the job look like in the end? Because, I don't think it just makes sense that AI is going to be an employee, because AI is just going to be doing work, right? So it's not really an employee. It's going to be doing work, and we're not constrained in the way we structure work for AI. It can work 24/7, but we are constrained in how we structure work for humans. So what it will be is, how can we use AI to boost the performance of people?
One of the things that I guess a big conversation is the upskilling portion, like how we're going to upskill all these people who will need to be upskilled, right? Because if they don't, it's either they do it themselves, or the company or the government or whatever organization helps people upskill, because how their role or what they do, it'll be much easier, and AI can do it much faster, better, without all those things. I guess the piece on the upskilling is, do you see organizations? So Jeff and I have met lots and lots of businesses, and we hear a lot of is executives and CEOs saying, hey, how could we reduce headcount? How can we be more efficient? How we can be productive? But I don't think we've ever heard, maybe once, and I can't even remember, how do we upskill our employees? How do we do that with AI? How do we get them even better? Because I would not only want to keep my employees, I want to take them even further, because it impacts the business as a whole and makes us even better.
I wonder if the reason you're not hearing CEOs ask that question is because I don't think enough HR professionals are asking that question yet. And HR would be, advising the CEOs and the leaders of an organization that this is a looming problem. And so often in businesses, what they do is we go along, we do our thing, and then all of a sudden crisis, we implement this thing, and we, weren't anticipating all the impacts, and then we have to let go of a bunch of people. Actually, so what you didn't mention in my intro, that's fine. I have a YouTube channel. I just talked to, I just recently talked to he's almost a guru of workforce planning, that we are looking 5 years down the road to say, this is what we think people will be doing, how we think they'll be doing it, and this is where we think they'll be doing it, and planning for that. He worked for Walmart, and so what he sees, at least, in his workforce planning experience, he sees is that in 5 years, AI is going to be a partner for employees, but it may have some impacts on where the work gets done. And so he, is thinking about how do we, so if it's going to be a partner to employees, what skills do employees need to have? And what do we need to be planning forward? And, what does the workforce look like? How many employees do we need? And if you need less employees, you're planning 5 years in advance. So in 5 years, you're not looking like mass terminations, which is, lousy HR. We do need to be doing workforce planning and thinking ahead on those issues, or in some instances, it may be ugly.
And I think it's also like a lot of these companies, they're talking, the executives we talk to, it's reducing headcount for a couple of reasons. A, it's even to stay competitive, because if your competitor is using AI and being more efficient, or somebody creates a full stack business and doing something and they're competing and they're beating you, how do you stay competitive? There's also in the AI space, they talk about when will there be the first $1 billion one employee company? And everybody goes, oh, that's really cool. And I'm going, well, not really for society's standpoint, because a $1 billion company today employs a lot of people, provides a lot of people with incomes, and makes our economy work. If you have a one-person $1 billion company, there's one individual gaining a lot of wealth and power, and a lot of other people that are unemployed. And so there's a bigger societal problem that I think businesses need to pay attention to and plan for, because as much as some people say, well, we've always figured it out. We've always found jobs for people. When we went from the horse and buggy to, the industrial.
Yeah.
This is different, and I think we have to have this discussion about where do people play that role, because it's critical for people to stay employed and we have a human in the loop.
And when you think about that $1 billion company, it's being powered by AI. So that's maybe where the workers have gone. They're doing the AI now for the $1 billion company. If the $1 billion company, if there's so many people out of work that they can't buy anything, the $1 billion company, aren't going to have a market to sell anything to their services or whatever it is they're doing. It could happen. I mean, I don't know. You guys know better than I about whether or not that could happen. But
Well, again, I think this is why I love to get your perspective on it, because I think when I had my company, employees are great and I love my employees. There are a lot of employees that helped me become successful, but there was also employees that were a total pain in the ass and they didn't show up for work and they caused problems. And I think that's where you get, that balance of going, do I use an AI tool that doesn't get sick, never, always shows up for work, but then you lose that human aspect. And again, I think it's an important thing, and we need HR professionals to keep, again, like, how do we use the AI and keep our people in the mix? It's important.
Well, and the creativity, and you just see it, the creativity, initially the creativity, but then the creativity in the way humans will even interact with AI that layers on more and more value. Yes, there always are going to be those slightly painful employees. But if you just try to get rid of employees altogether, you're also getting rid of all of the creativity and the initiative and the, passion and engagement that they come with. So it's a little bit of, you'd be throwing out the baby with the bathwater there.
One thing I know when you mentioned earlier today about like HR and the people team having to deal with feelings, I'm curious if you've ever thought of like human and AI collaboration, right? So I think like part of when we talk about the future of the workplace or the workforce, I guess workplace would be maybe not all companies are one person, $1 billion companies, but there will be AI working with people.
Mm-hmm.
And do you see any changes in, like, I guess, company culture, how companies operate when you have maybe 25% of your quote unquote employees are AI agents or 50% of them are? How do you see any shift in not just maybe how people interact with AI and HR and each other, but like how does that impact like the entire culture? Because we hear a lot of CEOs, I want to build this culture, I want to build this type of environment for my people or everyone who works for this company. Do you any changes in that, or where do you think that's going to go or lead to?
That is an interesting question, really not one I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I mean, part of me wants to say that AI is a tool, your software systems, but even the way, like the software system you choose to put in place, it has an impact. If you, choose to do this crazy not legacy, but this old system with lots of bureaucracy to it, versus a nimble system, it does communicate something to the culture of your organization. So if you, pick a very heavy, bureaucratic AI with lots of layers to it, it is going to reflect, and perpetuate a culture of bureaucracy. But I would say that you had if you picked a bureaucratic, way of implementing AI, that you had a bureaucratic culture to begin with. So it's just perpetuating something that already exists. I still think the culture lives in people, and you can use AI and you can use all of your tools either to enhance your culture or to perpetuate some unfortunate aspect of your culture that you would have rather not do. And so, there is, some thought you could put into that. And thought, maybe not about AI, but I put in, in HR around, well, what kind of culture are you trying to perpetuate in, say, the implementation of your policies? Then you don't want a big bureaucratic, legalistic culture. Then you need to be thinking about that as you implement your policies. And I would say the same goes for AI. I don't know, but like, what do you think? Do you think that AI, and the other thing I'm thinking about actually is if you train AI based on existing policies, they will perpetuate the culture inherent in those policies. So if if it's a very light, fun culture and you train it on very heavy, bureaucratic, legalistic, policies or procedures or whatever it is that you're trying to share, it's going to perpetuate that vibe in those policies as opposed to the what you actually want, which is light and fun. Recognizing that in the prompt, you can tell it to be light and fun, even though your policies and the knowledge it's drawing upon is heavy and bureaucratic or whatever. I don't know if that made sense. What your thoughts are?
Well, it's interesting because I think about, in my old company, we used to have flip-flop Fridays. We'd sit around on Fridays and have beers. And I'm wondering in 10 or 15 years, we'll be sitting around, half will be humans and half will be robots. I don't know what we'll drink beer. I don't know what they'll do, but
You're still going to drink beer. Your robots aren't going to drink beer. You know what you're going to do with your robots? You're going to send them to the closet and they can be in the robot closet while you guys drink beer in your flip-flops.
but we're going to think
Actually, from an HR point of view, can I say beer Fridays is maybe not a thing?
It is a thing. At
No,
tech companies, it's a thing.
Yeah, I know it's a thing someplace, but I had to say that. I'm HR.
But I think it's interesting because Carl and I have this discussion too every once in a while where we talk about organizations that when every company has the access to the same level of intelligence that AI is going to provide it, what's your competitive advantage? Because if you're an accounting firm and I'm an accounting firm, we both have the same access to the level of knowledge through AI. Our services are going to be exactly the same. So really it comes down to, I think, where humans are going to make a difference is that culture you create and the human touch is really going to be your differentiating point because your end service is going to be equal to the competitor down the street because I'll see what you're doing and I'll get my AI to just do it as good as you, slightly better. And so there's really no competitive advantage. So I think that's where humans are going to play a huge role.
Well, yeah, and it's the way humans bring it all together too. I mean, what is your differentiator when, you could provide the same basic service? Accounting companies now do, like let's say tax services, they do provide the same services, but they do and are looking for ways to differentiate themselves, even though fundamentally it's the same thing they're doing, and they do differentiate themselves successfully, and culture is a big part of that.
The one when you were talking about a little bit about culture, the one thing that really popped into my head is a lot of people are now using AI to form relationships with. For some people, that's kind of weird, but a lot of people are doing it, right?
Sorry, to be clear, we're talking about say like a romantic relationship or something.
Oh, yes, people can take it that far to a romantic relationship. But even a little bit, let's roll that back just a little bit to not so much as a romantic relationship, but maybe someone who they would confide with on a regular basis, providing because of how good AI is becoming in terms of even OpenAI had that issue, I think last week, about it being, they made a whole bunch of changes and it became a sycophant. And it kept being like, oh, you're and they had to roll back that change. The impact to something that listens to you on a regular basis, that supports you and it just continues to support you. Do you think that will play an impact in the workplace and in culture where, used to be you'd have quote unquote a work spouse, a workplace partner that you'd have conversations with, but instead it's like, you have, I don't know if it's people in the office just having conversations with AI.
Yes,
right?
I get it. Yes. To some degree, social media has done this where we used to have conversations with people in person. And now we're on social media having conversations with, diverse people that really don't mean anything to us. And so, yes, so now we're going to go away from having conversations with people at work to conversations with people with AI, and what is the impact? I think there are missed opportunities, and I think that's an excellent question that I hadn't really considered, and what the implications are to less interaction. So I'm not going to go ask my dumb question of the guy 2 offices down, which is good. But in not asking the dumb question, there's other opportunities that are missed for relationship building. And what I hope is that we ask AI the dumb questions and we get formulated thoughts, and then we're going to have far more meaty, engaged, thoughtful conversations with that guy, for example, 2 offices down. But we're still having those conversations because relationships are important.
I think, Andrea, that's a really good point. I think it's something that companies and HR people from a work standpoint need to manage and also embrace and encourage, because my fiance sent me a video and she thought it was quite funny, but it was this Instagram video with my new best friend, and it's this person walking around with their chat GPT, because chat GPT always gives the right answers. They know how to respond way better than I do. But I think that when you talk about that coworker, you're right. You don't want people to become siloed where they totally rely on their feedback from their AI work assistant and they don't walk down to talk to the person 2 offices down. I think that's where, from an HR standpoint, embrace the technology, encourage this type of usage, but also make sure you're, talking to your coworkers, because there is a real risk that I won't talk to my coworkers. I'll just talk to my AI. And now what does that look like from a work standpoint when everybody's siloed?
It looks like less quality, less creativity in the results. So it does seem to me that organizations are, we've doubled down on collaboration and now we're going to have to triple down on it. But we might be able to collaborate where we were collaborating down here before. We might be collaborating up here at a much smarter level because we're also much more informed.
Just to play a little bit of devil's advocate on that point, there are people who are say being able to converse and share your thoughts with an AI first rather than going out to, I guess, real people helps with some sort of social anxiety, and just kind of helps prepare you to, to talk to real people. Although the counter argument is a lot of people will stop at the AI and won't actually carry it on to the real person because it's like, well, this AI speaks to me a lot better. And we've seen that in the workplace too, right? You've seen people who are the introverts, not really comfortable in mass social settings, would rather maybe speak to 1 or 2 people in a smaller setting too, right? And as we get, I think, to a little bit of, we're seeing this now where companies don't need as many people in the organization because AI can do a lot more work. Maybe we'll have a lot more smaller companies rather than a lot of big major enterprises, or those enterprises will be pared down just a little bit more. And you have smaller groups, smaller, I guess, maybe cohorts or segments, because AI is doing a lot of that superficial work. And the collaboration is much more deeper between smaller groups of people rather than huge enterprises where everybody's mixing with everybody.
And it's a good thought. It brings up, I think it was interesting too. We had another client we met with that actually does benefits. And it was an interesting thing that made me think about, they're looking to use AI to improve their efficiencies for their benefits company. But I was also saying AI is also potentially something where you make your money off of selling benefits based on headcounts of employees. But if AI is going to start replacing employees and your headcounts are going to be lower, so what does that do for your business? It's almost like cannibalizing it to some degree. So there's lots of thought to come into.
There's lots of implications, but for those businesses that are considering, what I would say to those businesses that are considering downsizing, it's also, okay, yes, you can downsize, if that's your mission, whatever. But why don't you just do more? Don't downsize, do more, find new markets, compete. I mean, easy for me to say, but there's also opportunity in, and maybe it's a bit of a narrow window, but there's an opportunity to do more, to do better, to offer more. And I know for some organizations, like if you think about public service, they don't want, they just won't downsize because they're not competing. But maybe even for them, there's an opportunity for them to do more for their citizens with these people that now have some time freed up. I don't think the number of jobs we completely get rid of, I don't think there's going to be that many of them. What I think is the amount of work that one person can do will grow, amplified by AI. And so what work do we get them doing?
Well, and I think ethically and morally, business leaders, corporations need to think about the societal impact, because if everybody is saying, hey, I want to cut headcount because I can increase my margin, stay competitive, that's great for that business, but what does it do from a societal standpoint? And I compare it to when people talk about shop local, is that everybody says, yes, we should support local and shop at our local business as somebody's placing an Amazon order. And I'm going, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. And I think that companies, business leaders really need to go, how do we keep people employed, gainfully employed, and adapt this technology? And like you say, grow your market rather than just focus on headcount reduction, because that causes a much bigger, big problem from a society standpoint.
I do, I also believe in the resilience of people, though. They'll be creative. There are vulnerable people I worry about, in this whole AI thing, but on the whole, there are people who will be creative and resilient, and they will do amazing things faced with, these kinds of challenges.
So on that note, and I think that's a key point, is that the resiliency of humans, I think that's why we need to encourage people to get educated on AI and don't stick your head in the sand. Take a course, start using some of these tools. Don't ignore it, because it's not a passing fad. It's here to stay. So I'm encouraging, I got 3 kids that are coming out of university, and I'm like, you need to learn this. And they're like, well, 2 of them are going to be school teachers. What? And I'm going, because you're going to have an AI assistant in your classroom. And if you're not up to speed on this, you're going to get left behind. So I would just say that that's a key importance that people need to. And so I would encourage companies to start asking for AI credentials when they're hiring, because it would encourage people to learn a little bit about the technology.
Even before, though, they are asking for AI credentials when they hire, but they need to be thinking about, they need to be baking AI in. They need to be thinking about AI at a broad level across the organization. What's their AI strategy? To hire some junior finance person because they've got AI on their resume, but there's no appetite to enable this person to bring AI into the organization, you're just going to frustrate that person, and the guy's going to go out the door to the next place. So you need to have at least some way and plan and thought around enabling talent with AI skills to do something with that skill.
So, Andrea, I think we mentioned that you are an HR consultant with HR Hub. Can you tell us a little bit more of what the HR Hub does, and maybe a little bit more of your YouTube channel?
So the HR Hub is an HR consultancy. Really, I'm a generalist. I do almost all parts of HR. The 3 main areas I focus on are strategy. I'd like to focus on AI, but HR is late adopter, so that's been, not as much uptake on there. And then also helping organizations deal with crisis. As a consultant, a lot of times clients are reaching out because they do have some sort of employee crisis. So those are the 3 main things, but really I cover the range of HR. And about my YouTube channel, I cover, any aspect of HR, whether that's the technical skill, thought leadership, or soft skill. I cover any aspect. Coming up on 10,000 subscribers now, and I publish every week. So I enjoy talking to experts from around the world, really, about any aspect of HR.
Learn more about the future trends of AI in business by watching these videos here. Enjoy today's episode? Want to learn how AI can impact your business? Then please subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.